The subprime bubble 2.0 is about to burst. It turns out that the US government has been making the mortgage payments for hundreds of thousands of defaulted mortgage borrowers using taxpayer dollars, and this was just exposed by the Wall Street Journal. And if it's reversed, it has the potential to cause a massive, cataclysmic housing downturn in many cities and neighborhoods across America. And the big issue is the FHA mortgage program, the first-time homebuyer mortgage program, where you could put 3% down to buy a house. This mortgage program now has a 14% default rate. The default rate's 13.5%. Over 1 million mortgage borrowers on the FHA program are currently in default, and the Biden administration basically was blocking these defaulted mortgages from going to foreclosure. And what the Biden administration was doing was that when a mortgage borrower went in default and claimed financial hardship, they stepped in and made the mortgage payments for them. Or they tacked the mortgage payments onto the back of the loan so the borrower has more debt. And this has been something that's been artificially inflating the housing bubble and preventing the foreclosures and the listings from hitting the market. And some of the things that I'm going to show you in this video are going to absolutely shock you. I was shocked and appalled at some of the things I read about what the US government has been doing. This is one of the biggest scams that the US government has been involved with in decades, in my opinion. Because essentially what the government was doing was they were giving this loan program for first-time buyers where your credit score could be as low as 580. You could have a 580 credit score and put 3.5 down. And they would give these borrowers these subprime loans. I mean, these are subprime loans. A bank would never offer these loans without the government backing. And then when that borrower would inevitably default, sometimes within only a year, the government would prevent it from going to foreclosure using taxpayer money. Now that this has been exposed by the Wall Street Journal op-ed, which highlighted that Biden's mortgage relief program caused this subprime crisis and that there's an FHA subprime bubble, what's going to happen now? What's the Trump administration and Elon Musk going to do in response? I think particularly an area that could see lower prices if these foreclosures are allowed to happen. There's around 400,000 backlog foreclosures right now that are being stopped by the US government. I think if they're allowed to happen, we could see prices in a city like Fort Worth, Texas, where I am right now, we could see them drop by a lot. Because there's a lot of FHA mortgage borrowers here in Fort Worth. A lot of people have actually bought in home building communities from builders like D.R. Horton with FHA low down payment mortgages, and a lot of them are now going into default. And so I think we could see lower prices here in Fort Worth. We could see lower prices in a city like Las Vegas. We could see lower prices in Orlando. Those are some of the top markets for FHA mortgages in America and would be some of the ones that are most exposed if these foreclosures are set loose and if the Trump administration does the right thing and turns off this subprime mortgage support offered by the US government. And I think some people in the real estate industry watching this might take issue with me calling these subprime loans. They're going to say, no, Nick, these loans have income documented. They're nothing like the mortgages from the mid-2000s. But the crazy thing, everyone, is that when you look at the credit quality of these mortgages, they're horrible. They're worse than they were in the mid-2000s. The Wall Street Journal has a graph showing the percentage of FHA borrowers who have a debt-to-income ratio above 43%. It's over two-thirds. Over two-thirds of FHA borrowers, when they get the mortgage, have to pay over 43% of their income to debt costs. I want you to think about that. That means pretty much anyone borrowing from the FHA program right now is doing so in a situation where they can't really afford the payments. Back actually in the 90s and 2000s, it was only a quarter of all FHA mortgages had a debt to income above 43%. And some of the stuff that was happening here, folks, was absolutely wild. If you go further into this Wall Street Journal article, they mentioned how in 2024, mortgage servicers made 552,000 incentive payments to mortgage borrowers to prevent them from getting foreclosed on. Translation, mortgage servicers took money from the US government FHA mortgage program and put it in the pockets of defaulted home owners under the FHA mortgage program who could not make their payments. That is absolutely absurd. What's even more absurd is that in some cases, the government is automatically lowering the mortgage payments for these defaulted borrowers by 25%. If you go to the FHA mortgage website, it says very plainly, if you're in default and claim financial hardship, you could have your payments reduced by 25% with no contact. They could just do it automatically. And I sincerely hope that Scott Turner, the new head of the FHA, sworn in under the Trump administration a couple weeks ago, takes a serious look at what's going on in his department. And so, folks, get this. There's 7.8 million FHA mortgages outstanding. That's approximately 17% of all mortgages. So there's 54 million mortgages total. 13% are already in default. And actually, 17% of the mortgages originated in 2022 are in default. So, think about that. 17% of these mortgages originated less than 3 years ago are already in default. The borrower's not making payments. And so if you are curious why home prices haven't dropped by more, why this housing market seemingly still makes no sense in most parts of the country, the buyer demand's way down, the inventory's way up, but the prices haven't really come down in most areas. Well, this is one of the reasons. Your government was actively conspiring to prevent the needed inventory from coming to the market. Excuse me.